Coming up, the director and producer of Berni's Journey, a documentary film about personal transformation, Berni Slowey.
Welcome to Having It All, Lifestyles of the Rich and Conscious with MarBeth Dunn, featuring experts and pioneers in health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality, creating a happier, healthier, wealthier you. And now, here's our host, MarBeth Dunn.
Oh, Berni, I am so thrilled and honored to have you on my show.
MarBeth, I'm really excited too.
Yeah, this was so exciting to be part of the film and then have you on the show. What you created is just so amazing, and I'm so delighted to share this with our listeners today. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be your guest today because of how important you were in the film and what you did for me personally on this trip to India 4 years ago. And it was actually 4 years ago. It's our anniversary of when I arrived to India at the start of the project.
It was such a transformational trip. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Me too. And I think even my body, cellularly, remembers the feeling of the anticipation as well as the anxiety about pursuing this project as a first-time filmmaker.
Yeah. Well, you had such an interesting life. You were a refugee from Vietnam, and that wasn't all. Why don't you share your story?
Yes, I came to the United States in 1975. My mother and I arrived from Saigon just one day before Saigon fell. My parents met during the Vietnam War. So when we arrived to Nebraska, my father really had to endure a lot of the unwelcomed veterans scenario where a lot of the veterans were admonished. My mother being Vietnamese and really didn't know English and she didn't know the culture. It was quite a shock for her. And just even for me as I think a bright-eyed 4-year-old expecting to be part of this new world and not feeling welcomed. And so when we left Nebraska, my father actually received a job from Bell Helicopter in Tehran, Iran. And so just a couple years after we arrived in Nebraska in 1977, we moved to Tehran. And this was during the anti-Shah revolution. And so if people remember the 444 days of the hostage situation, we actually were in the thick of it. And so we had to evacuate again. And so by the time I was 7 years old, before I was 8 years old, I had evacuated 2 different countries. And so the first time I had evacuated, I didn't feel welcomed. Well, can you imagine like coming back after the hostage situation? I remember coming into the classroom in 2nd grade and people hearing that I was from Iran. And then when they went home to tell their families, we had the stigma that we were terrorists. And so I think that there was just an unsettled feeling of not belonging at a very young age. And so it really probably is what prompted my desire to find ways to really stand out and feel like I was actually a part of something, that I was someone that was worthy of living.
I know. It's such an amazing story that where you are today and having that trauma as a child, that's really quite remarkable. And so you worked in a bank for several years.
Yeah, so fast forward, when we returned to Nebraska after Iran, it was in 1984 that my father got a job with Martin Marietta. We moved to Colorado. And that was another phase of my life that I think that was really an opportunity for early transformation. I think I was really shy and reserved when I was in Nebraska, but Colorado, I think it was just maybe that there was more diversity, that I felt that I was really coming out of my shell. And so I was being more confident about pursuing things. And that was really the start of my achievement path, where high school I wanted to achieve. And then as I went to college, I started as a teller my freshman year in college, and I was working part-time and also going to school part-time or full-time so that I could afford college. And I wanted to move up the corporate ladder very quickly because I liked having the feeling of achievement, but also the freedom that it brought. Every time that I received a promotion, I could have more flexibility, more pay. And so I did that through my college career, as well as really being in my banking career for 20 years, starting as a teller and then finishing as an executive.
And then what prompted you to create this movie?
Yeah, so the 20-year mark, that was during the time where we were experiencing the Great Recession. The banking industry was really experiencing some, negative stigma around the bank failures. And then also it was creating a lot of toxic behavior in the banking industry. And certainly from where I was, it was really difficult to be a female executive at that time. And I experienced 3 miscarriages so I was really being told by my body that I'm shutting down. And, I was experiencing such anxiety that the month of my 20th year career actually is when I resigned. Now, because of the Great Recession, it took me 2 years to unsuccessfully find a job. I think I also was in my ego, hoping that I would go to something of equal or better title, because that's what I was always about, achieving a greater title and greater pay. However, it was the worst time possible. And I was also amongst the mix of many people that were on the job search. And certainly, that really was a humbling experience, but also what was probably building up inside me was, Berni, you're not meant to go in that direction. There was a calling that I felt deep in my gut about wanting to help others who may have experienced the same thing I did with a very difficult transition, trying to find a job, not being successful, and then really starting to have some reflection on, well, what is my life purpose anyway? What am I really pursuing? So that is when I had this deep feeling of, Berni, you need to tell a story through film. And I've always loved movies. I've loved movies ever since I evacuated from Vietnam. My first movie was Dr. Seuss. I remember the refugee camp, and I just thought, wow, movies are so cool. And it was an escape mechanism for me. And I was always intrigued because I wanted to live somebody else's life. And so with the movie, I thought, with the documentary, with the great advances that technology has anymore, that, most people are able to actually just pick up a phone. But because of the digital era, many people are doing short videos. And I thought with the documentary, I'm going to find a subject matter that is going to help people some way, just really help people through their transitions, their difficult transitions that I experienced.
And then you ended up in India with a group of spiritual teachers.
Yes, with a group of spiritual teachers, including you and Harrison Klein, who invited me, because I actually met Harrison when I had my first miscarriage. And so I just believe that was even divinely, guided, that the both of us would meet, so that 2 years after my unsuccessful job search, that Harrison would call me out of the blue and that would invite me on this trip to India to have access to speakers like yourself, to be able to interview. And my vision for this documentary was that I wanted to be able to share stories of those spiritual teachers who also experienced a great transition in their life and what brought them to their modality and what they're sharing. So that the documentary was going to be about the spiritual teachers, what they taught, and also a little bit about their background, so that we could have a little more personalization about where your journey has led you.
But it didn't quite work out like that, eh?
No. And that's the fun part of what, as far as, remembering when I arrived in India and first hearing about how the tour portion of the conference was where I was going to get a lot of the backstories from the spiritual teachers. And so when I'd heard that the tour was actually canceled, that's when I started having this trepidation about, oh my gosh, I've just invested so much, because, this wasn't just something that I had funded and had all the support to go on this kind of a cinematic quest. This was completely on my credit card. And so my husband was not thrilled about the idea of me as a first-time filmmaker, no experience. I have a camera class for 1 hour that taught me how to actually use my Canon 7D. So completely a novice, and like everything is against me, right? But everything was pushing me to go to India. And so when I got there and arrived, and hearing that the tour was canceled, and then when we arrived at the conference, it wasn't exactly what I had planned. Everything was planned so that I could have this production go very smoothly, and it fell apart.
Right, I remember that. And we did actually have the tour, but not exactly the way we had planned it either. So
I know. And I think that was part of what was building. So everything was falling apart around me. I'm trying to hold it all together. And that's part of my, that was my executive nature, to never let them see you sweat. So, as much planning as I did, and as much as I could, pretend as though everything was fine, I was falling apart inside. Everything outside of me seemed to be falling apart. And so I think there was just this massive buildup, right, for an explosion. It was like this, or implosion. And so as everything was concluding at the conference, I'm hectically trying, I'm trying to figure out what this story is about. What is this documentary actually going to be about? And my desire was, well, I guess it's going to have to happen during the tour. And so fortunately, we had a companion who was able to pick up the reins and formulated a tour with a tour group in India. And so that's when the next adventure began, after everything was falling apart.
Right. And so it ended up being a movie about your transformation rather than about our stories.
Yes. So Berni's journey really started as a result of an encounter that I had with a cobra. As we were setting out for our first day of the tour, I was also meeting up with my second film crew, because I had a film crew for the conference, and then I had a secondary film crew that I had hired to come with us on the tour. And so when we were making a stop before arriving to Agra, that's where the Taj Mahal, the gorgeous Taj Mahal is. We were making a routine pit stop when we pulled into this Maharaj that had some dancing monkeys and a cobra. And something about that cobra stirred something in me that caused me just to have this reaction where I was having a meltdown and an anxiety attack. And again, I'm really trying to hold it together. But the more that I was trying to hold it together, that's when the moment about to, as far as my image of wanting to make everything seem as though I had it all together, fell apart as well. So my meltdown is what really prompted the story twisting from the spiritual teachers to actually Berni's journey, my personal story of transformation, and finishing the film, completing the trip through India with the wonderful guidance of people like you and the other spiritual teachers.
It was a wonderful experience being part of the film, but now you've gone even deeper, and now you've explored how our life is a movie.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because, it was one thing to have the movie in the can per se. It was coming home, right? I still had a movie to edit and write a story around to actually create the finished product. So, it was kind of one of those things. I could have this wonderful experience in India, but there was something about the desire to, again, tell a story. Thankfully, we did record the interviews and what happened during India. Because the integration home was a process in itself.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, your husband was not exactly thrilled about your doing the film. What happened with that?
Yes. When we go through these personal transformations, these journeys, we are never alone, right? We have our loved ones, we have our friends, and they're all looking up from the outside in, and they're, my friends are trying to be supportive, but they're basically saying, she's really got off the deep end. My husband, who is saying, I'm trying to support you because I know this is important to you, but this is costing us a lot of money. And I don't know what this means. What does this mean that you're going and experiencing this? And I'm at home watching the kids over the holidays. And so there was a real disconnect, because here I was in an incubator essentially, on this project, filming this documentary with the spiritual teachers, being completely supported. And he's only watching it from the outside. So when I arrived at home and my kids noticed this is a different person, my husband, Joe, was seeing a different person, it had to be really scary for him. And so, I was kind of coached to be able to talk about, yes, there is change, but I'm growing into my truer self versus I'm changed and I'm running away. It was, that part of that integration of not only do I have an opportunity to understand what just happened, I have a lot of growth to still experience, but how do I parlay that into finishing the film? Because when I came back initially, if I would have finished the film and, done the editing within 3 to 6 months, it would have been a totally different movie than what it turned out to be. And it's part of that whole journey, right? Versus the relishing in the journey versus reaching for the destination.
Yes.
Right? Because we get so anxious about wanting to see the final result. But what happened for I would call it Act 3 in finishing the film, was that I was able to get more comfortable because, I just shared my background story about as a Vietnam refugee. Well, that wasn't in the original short. It was going to be a short of maybe 38 to 40-minute documentary. It was not going to have a lot about my background. It was going to be more specifically to, the career changing, identity crisis, heading to India, getting all the support, and then trying to figure out what the ending would be. What transpired because of the time that was really necessary for the story to continue to unfold, as Joe was watching my process of finishing the story and also really attracting some incredible talent, having a multi-Emmy award-winning editor, Emmy-winning writer, the talent pool was incredible. I was learning from them, even though I was the director. I was learning from them and really allowing them to help guide me to finish the film. And so through that process, I was a lot more comfortable sharing my own story. That is what the Act 1 of the film is about, is really a little bit more about what really drove this personality into becoming an achiever and then getting to India. But also what was really important was the perspective of my husband. And what happened, MarBeth, and this was also in a process, was that when we were actually having campaigns to raise money through Kickstarter to finish the film, people were asking questions about how Joe felt. And I would always give this answer about well, I think he's okay with it, because he would never really tell me, but he was also brewing, and that he was really upset that, when is this movie going to be finished? How much more money are you going to spend? As a result of a campaign that a fundraising event that we had at a house, I had asked Joe to speak. What happened at that was so pivotal to his involvement in the film, because he really did not hold back. He was very honest and very transparent and truly authentic to how he felt, and he stole the show. He basically laid it out there, and I'd never even heard this myself. But because of his perspective and sharing, because people thought, oh, wow, what a great husband who was just so supportive, because it actually makes it more humanized, that these journeys aren't always smooth. Because we have this awakening or whatever the journey finds us, not everybody's going to understand and be supportive around us. And it just made the story so much richer and believable, and it was just truly a connection for more viewers, because they could understand from Joe's perspective. And a lot of people, whether you're a husband or wife, watching your spouse, your loved one go through something, to share the other side of the purview that, hey, I may not be happy about this, but what had transpired is that when Joe was really reluctant to be part of the film, and watching this progression of, the talent coming together and the movie coming together, it was 2 years later before Joe actually decided that he was going to participate and be interviewed for the movie.
Wow. I knew he was interviewed. I didn't realize it took that long.
Yes, it took that long. It took that long to expand the story from a short to a feature length. And so really it was what was necessary to, just expand on the story as it needed to. And also, it wasn't just Joe's perspective that was included. As you know, Les Nordhauser, who is one of the producers of the film, and also by great coincidence that he was available to actually join us in India on this project, that his perspective is also included in the film as kind of the omniscient one, right? From somebody who was both in front and behind the camera, watching everything take place. And his perspective of somebody who may not have believed in this transformation or spirituality, but really being impacted by the story and by all the spiritual teachers.
We'll be back to our show in just a moment. Would you agree that the current state of the world is angry, chaotic, turbulent, and possibly insane? And that's not even mentioning everyone's personal issues. We all need miracles, and now is the time. I'm MarBeth Dunn, the Miracle Mama. Imagine a river of miracles flowing into your life, bringing harmonious relationships, better health, prosperity, clarity, peace of mind, and a deep sense of joy. What if you could know all your needs are being met and feel calm and peaceful even in the midst of turbulent change? Get your free guide now, 7 easy ways to harness the power of miracles at miracles101.com. That's miracles101.com and live your miraculous life. Yes, watching your transformation from the filming of the movie and seeing the shifts that you were experiencing was really so profound.
I'm so glad to hear that you said that, MarBeth. And that was really purposeful because, I'm watching it, I'm watching all the footage and just seeing the quality of the production, the quality of the cinematography, the quality of my interviews, the quality of how I appear on screen, right? That is all part of this journey, of Berni's journey. And I think that when we all watch heroes on screen, we watch that transformation, that somebody who's reluctant, the reluctant hero, I did not expect to be the protagonist in my film. And if I would have known, actually, this is interesting, MarBeth, because if I would have known the story would have been about me, I would have never gone to India.
I know.
And I certainly, that I would have thought ahead of time about, there's no way I'm going to be vulnerable. There's no way. I'm a perfectionist. I have a certain image to portray. There's no way I'm going to show and shed my skin in front of everyone.
Yet you were so vulnerable, and it was so interesting, just speaking with each of the different teachers and how you were so open to receiving.
And because I felt safe. This, like I said, with the incubator, experience, it was that I was completely supported, that Les was there to help me on the production side. And I had 2 great, wonderful cameramen, Ramesh and Indrajit. And then the spiritual teachers, when I arrived, MarBeth, I was just hoping that the spiritual teachers would see the value of the production and be part of it. And then by the end, as you know, it was like, hey, this is something really cool. I want to be part of it because it was something that we were all experiencing together, that the filming was all of us were in each other's stories.
Yes. And the movie has been successful. It's premiered at the Women's Film Festival in Denver to 3 sold-out screenings.
Yes.
And you've had several successful screenings. And the Friday Harbor Film Festival in November.
Yes, and it was an audience favorite. And even with the finished product and now getting it out there, what I've learned, MarBeth, after, the Q&A sessions are really my favorite times of when people have a chance to actually watch the film, and afterward being able to have the Q&A between the audience and the director. I've noticed and I've also learned what the film actually does for people. And for so many viewers, the biggest compliment I've received is that when people said, I thought I was just going to go watch a movie. And in fact, what they tell me is that I became part of this journey. I was watching your story, but I was thinking of myself and my own journey, watching the film. And that at the end of the movie, they're asking themselves, where am I in my personal journey, and where do I want to get supported and to continue on my journey? And that was where I knew that there was much more responsibility than just going on a film circuit and the film festival. I really felt it was important for me to tap into what I've learned on my transformation and really parlay that. I really do see life as a movie, because we go through different acts. The act 1, 2, and 3. And in act 1, where we're really still kind of in reactive mode. And that sometimes we see ourselves as the victim, right? That we're just they were victims of circumstances or whatever the case may be. And that we have this awakening moment that in Act 2, we realize that, wait a second, we are actors in this movie of sorts. And so going into Act 3, what I've learned is that after finishing the film is that it's true that we are directors of our lives. And that we really are in the driver's seat in how we choose to look at which lens we want to see life through. Is it a narrow lens? Is it a wide lens? Are we clear, or is there, it needs to go into a little more focus? As well as, when we look at the script, are we just acting out whatever the script is given to us, or do we have a chance to really rewrite it? And I really felt that I was writing my script. I was looking at my past that I thought I was a victim of being a refugee, of war, of discrimination or prejudices. But everything that I experienced in my life prior to going to India prepared me. My 20-year career, my executive nature, my perfectionist side prepared me for that moment with the Cobra. It said, Berni, this is your story. Can you be the hero of your own story? And, for me, I never thought I was worthy enough to be the hero of my own story. And finishing this project and understanding the responsibility of sharing that story is because I want to be able to continue to help others. That was my original vision. I wanted to be able to help others. And now I feel like I can do so more by just being my own, vulnerable self, and that we're not perfect, but we truly are heroes. We had a moment where we were sitting down at dinner, and I know I've shared this with you before, but it sticks with me because I kept telling you how my legs were feeling as though they were going to give out. And they were really shaky. I'm like, I'm a strong person. This isn't like weak in the knees or, where I don't feel like I have the endurance.
Right.
It's definitely something where what you shared with me was, Berni, your legs are giving way because there's something that they're wanting to move forward and you're holding yourself back.
Yeah.
There was this conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was happening in my legs, right? About moving, stepping forward. But yet, wait a second, am I ready for that? Can I step into it? Can I step into it? And whatever you did for the healing of just recognizing that, the acknowledgement, the awareness of it, I didn't have that experience again on that trip.
Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely. It was the recognition, because your body's always communicating with you. And when you have that recognition, like, oh, look what my body's saying, you're ready to step forward. You're just holding yourself back. That's when you were able to step in and actually go for it.
Yeah. Yes. That was just part of the evolution, right? Of, to the point where we were in Rishikesh. In Rishikesh, you were so right that just being able to see the quality of the production on screen, when we get to Rishikesh and how beautiful Rishikesh was.
Oh, it was amazing. It was so beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. So this is such a treat for me for my personal anniversary of really jumping into this project. And so I'm so glad to be able to have done this with you.
Oh, me too. Thank you. Well, that's a wonderful way to end what has been an awesome interview, Berni. And I want to let our listeners know that you can learn more about Bernadette Slowey and connect with her on social media and access her official trailer for the Berni Journey on her show page on TheHavingItAllShow.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, MarBeth.
Join MarBeth next week on The Having It All Show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Conscious. Visit TheHavingItAllShow.com now to learn more about MarBeth and her special guests and download your free report.